What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Thank you for clicking onto this reaction. I hope you're looking forward to it just as much as I am. If you haven't already, head over to the content creators page. That link is in the description box down below. If you haven't already and you're enjoying our content, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we're going to jump straight into this one. Battles of Xanthos and Rhodes. Let's go.
In our previous episode, we talked about the Second Triumvirate, and Octavian, Antony and Lepidus took over Rome, enacting bloody prescriptions and solidifying their power. However, Brutus and Cassius had not been idle. They too had effectively revived the Pompeian faction under their leadership as the Liberators, and were amassing their forces for war. In this episode, we shall see how they mobilized almost the entirety of the East and prepared for their confrontation with the Triumvirs. These grand figures of Roman history left a well-known legacy. In fact, extra cost 500 hours by subscribing the description. Brutus had seized Macedonia and the legions located there from Antony's brother Gaius in 43 BC. Worried that his men would just as easily defect back to Antony's side, Brutus had sailed across the Aegean to Asia Minor, hoping that the distance would prevent any pro-Antony rumors from reaching them. From here, he consolidated his position, rallying more men to his cause, particularly refugees fleeing the Triumvirate's proscriptions in Rome. Combined with the army previously under Gaius's command, he had 8 legions. Gaius Antonius proved to be a constant problem though, attempting to instigate a number of mutinies among Brutus's ranks. After the formation of the Second Triumvirate, it was decided that Gaius was now too dangerous to be left alive, and he was executed at the start of 42 BC.
I understand it, he had to go,
Around
really,
this
didn't
same
he?
time, Brutus, nervous of a potential revolt in Macedonia, crossed back into Europe to handle any potential disasters. He also undertook a minor expedition in Thrace, winning the Thracian king Rescupolis to the Pompeian cause. After reaffirming his control of Macedonia, he once again pulled back.
It was good getting that guy on his side, because then obviously he now doesn't have to worry about that frontier being open up to possible attacks. That alliance sort of solidifies the defense of that area.
To Asia Minor. Meanwhile, in Syria, Cassius, following the death of Dolabella, had planned to march on Egypt. Out of the 12 legions that Cassius had procured from the governors of the East, 4 had been sent by Cleopatra to assist Dolabella before being intercepted en route. It was apparent then that Cleopatra intended to side with the Triumvirs, and Cassius aimed to quash this possibility early. As he began his march on Cleopatra, however, word reached him of the formation of the Second Triumvirate, and that they had already begun moving forces into Greece, sailing 8 legions across the Adriatic. Immediately, Cassius abandoned his
putting threat on a different frontier, making him change his plans. Smart play.
Plan, marching to Asia Minor with all speed to combine with Brutus, requesting aid from Eastern client kings and even the Parthians as he marched.
How much aid did he get though? That's the question.
The 2 men met in Smyrna in Anatolia around late January 42 BC. Initially, Brutus suggested that they take their entire force of 20 legions immediately to Macedonia to confront the Triumvirs.
Just straight up in one battle.
If they attacked now, they would be able to crush the 8 legions and prevent any more from landing in Macedonia. Cassius, on the other hand, disagreed. The Triumvirs had their hands full in Rome, and would also be nervous of Sextus Pompey amassing forces in Sicily. Moreover, the Caesarians had a number of allies in the area, namely the Rhodians and Lycians, with strong navies that could effectively pin Cassius and Brutus in Greece if they were not careful. Cassius thus suggested that their focus should be to eliminate these allies. In doing so, they could flip the tables, forcing the Triumvirs to land a large force in Greece without an adequate naval supply line to support them. Cassius was the more experienced and talented general. He had fought in Crassus's Parthian campaign and had distinguished himself in the aftermath. As such, the 2 men decided to follow Cassius's strategy.
I do understand it. He's wanting to gain the naval advantage here. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done. Putting all your forces in one basket and attacking full on is an interesting one. It's very risky. What would you guys have done? Let me know in the comments box down below.
Brutus would handle the Lycians and Cassius the Rhodians.
Okay.
Cassius made for Myndus and began amassing a fleet of 80 ships to sail for Rhodes. He had been partly raised and educated on the island and was well known in the city. Upon hearing of his approach, the Rhodians sent peace delegations. Rhodes was technically an ally of the Roman Republic.
Okay.
The Rhodians had a peace treaty with Rome and had promised to assist the Senate in times of war. With the Senate now effectively controlled by the Triumvirate, the Rhodians could not side against them. Cassius rejected these arguments.
That's
He
it.
claimed the Senate was run by dictators, that he and
It's an interesting attempt there that he's going to try and say that they're dictators and they don't actually hold the legal rights to the Senate. So that would be interesting to see what the Rhodians do.
Brutus were now the true embodiment of the Republic, and that the Rhodians thus owed their allegiance to them. Still, the Rhodians refused Cassius and began preparing their fleet for war. In a last-ditch effort to make peace, they sent Archelaus, Cassius's old teacher, to negotiate. Tearfully, Archelaus begged Cassius to spare the city. Cassius again refused. He pointed out that the Senate had previously ordered all people east of the Adriatic should assist himself and Brutus. This was true. However, if the Rhodians abided by that decree and assisted Cassius and Brutus, they would simultaneously be breaking their peace treaty by going to war with the Roman Senate.
They're in a
After
no-win
many days of
situation,
debating,
really, aren't they?
They finally came to a conclusion. Sailing with 33 of their best ships, they sailed to Myndus to fight Cassius's navy.
Okay.
Cassius reluctantly sailed out of port to meet them. The Rhodians were renowned as some of the best sailors of the ancient world, and their ships were light and quick. The fighting was hard, but Cassius's larger navy was eventually able to surround the Rhodian fleet.
And that's it.
Without room to maneuver, the lighter Rhodian ships lost their advantage, and the heavy Roman ships were able to close in. 3
And
Rhodian
board
ships
as
were
well, I'd
captured,
imagine.
2 sunk, and many badly damaged before the Rhodians withdrew from the battle. Cassius quickly made any necessary repairs to his fleet before pushing his advantage and landing a force on the island.
Seems like it's just going to be an
The
absolute
Rhodian navy
domination,
attempted
but
to
let's
sally
see what
out
the
of its
Rhodians
ports,
can do.
but was again quickly crushed. Cassius now had Rhodes
Yeah.
besieged from both land and sea.
That's it.
Rather than suffer the horrors of a prolonged siege, a faction within the city opened the gates to Cassius. 50 leading Rhodians were executed, and their vast treasury was seized, but the city was spared, Cassius forbidding his men from violence or looting.
Okay, that's kind of fair.
Brutus,
Kind of fair.
meanwhile, led his 8 legions against the important city of Xanthos in Lycia. The Xanthians had prepared themselves well, creating a trench and embankment around the city. However, many of the men under Brutus's command had served under Caesar and had experience of siegecraft. Working day and night under the protection of movable defenses, the legions were able to completely besiege the city in a matter of days. Battering rams were swiftly brought up to attack the walls and gates. The defenses were strong,
Brutus
though,
showing
and Brutus's
his
men,
worth
having only
here.
managed to inflict minor damage on the defenses, abandoned their siege engines.
Oh, okay, maybe
That
not.
night, the Xanthians sallied out to burn the rams. Suddenly, Brutus's men fell upon them in the darkness. The Xanthians had been lured into a trap. Desperately, they tried to retreat into the city, but finding the gate had been closed, they were trapped outside, and many were killed in front of the gates.
Just left out to die.
The next day, the Xanthians again sallied out to burn the rams, and the Romans again attacked. This time, the Xanthians kept their gate open, allowing their men to retreat back into the city.
Nice.
But this also resulted in about 2,000 Romans also getting through. The Xanthians suddenly dropped their portcullis, trapping the Romans inside. They, too, had lured the Romans into a trap. Desperately, the 2,000 legionaries trapped inside fought their way to the Forum under constant missile fire, taking refuge in the Temple of Sarpedon. At the same time, their colleagues on the outside were determined to break in and rescue them, attempting to use grappling hooks to scale the walls, some using
Is this
crags in
the
the wall
final
to climb
push
their
they
way up.
needed?
A small group was able to scale the walls and opened a small side gate, allowing more legionaries inside.
Nice.
They fought their way to the portcullis, and with men hacking at it from the inside and outside, were finally able to break it down, allowing Brutus's force to pour into the
And
city.
that's it, Brutus has
The
won,
city
right?
was lost, and
Nice.
according to Appian, many of the citizens killed themselves, with Brutus only taking 150 men captive. Following this siege, other cities in Lycia...
I understand it. Kill yourself instead of suffering the fate of what someone else could do to you, and also slave work and everything else. It's not worth the risk.
such as Patara and
Horrible
Pyrrha,
choice.
quickly surrendered to Brutus. Soon, all of Lycia was pledged to him militarily and paid heavy tributes to him.
They really did
In a few months,
consolidate the
Brutus
East.
and Cassius between them had thus neutered two powerful naval allies of the Triumvirs, as well as
Nice.
massively increasing their finances, ensuring that they would be able to keep their legions loyal when the time came to confront the Triumvirs in Greece.
Okay then, boys.
Cassius
They
and
got the
Brutus,
naval
hearing that Cleopatra
dominance.
was also sending a fleet to the Peloponnese, sent 80 ships of their fleet under Mercus to keep an eye out for her arrival. Fortunately for the liberators, though, a storm had devastated Cleopatra's fleet, forcing her to return to Egypt. Not wanting to keep such a large fleet idle, Mercus instead sailed to Brundisium to blockade the port and prevent the Triumvirs from sending more men across the Adriatic.
Interesting.
Antony, in
How
command
does
of
it
the
work?
forces in the area, attempted to break the blockade with his own ships, but did not have the numbers, and was forced to send for Octavian to assist him.
Ooh, okay. So maybe getting those two naval ports and the naval dominance is going to provide to be a better choice. Let's see.
Octavian was currently engaged in a campaign against Sextus Pompey. The son of Pompey the Great had taken advantage of the chaos caused by the assassination of Caesar, its aftermath, and the conflict between the Senate and Antony to rebuild his position in Sicily. Gathering men from across the
As Littlefinger says, chaos is just a ladder.
Mediterranean, he had gradually been building his force. This force grew larger still during the proscriptions of the Triumvirate, which had forced many influential men to take refuge with him. Shortly after the formation of the Triumvirate, he had used this force to besiege the governor of Sicily, and with the help of some senators who had fled to him, forced him to surrender the province. The Triumvirs had only just begun treating him as a serious threat, Octavian sending his top general at the time,
It's a
Salvidienus,
mutiny
to
right in
handle
your
the
back
matter.
doorstep.
However,
Of course it's a
Sextus
big
had dealt
threat.
Salvidienus a minor but important victory in the Straits of Messina. Octavian had taken up the campaign himself, but
Okay.
upon receiving Antony's summons, immediately sailed to Brundisium, leaving Sicily and Sextus alone for the time being. Upon Octavian's arrival,
I wonder if that's going to come back and bite him in the arse. I think it is.
Mercus retreated, not wanting to be trapped between the forces of
Smart.
Antony and Octavian. Instead, he planned to harass any ships attempting to cross the Adriatic. The Triumvirs were far more audacious than Mercus assumed, however, and with favourable winds, they made a number of quick and risky crossings without military ships, so as not to draw too much attention. Soon, Antony and
Wow,
Octavian
boys.
had managed to move 11 legions across the Adriatic, leaving
Wow.
leaders in Rome to control the city.
11 legions. Was that 11 additional legions to the 8 that were already there? Because that's what it looks like. And if so, whoo, it's a lot of legions.
Mercus was furious, but nevertheless held his position, determined to at the very least prevent any
Why are you
supplies or
furious, bruv?
munitions
It's
from
your fault.
reaching the Triumvirs.
Only be
Ahenobarbus,
annoyed at
son of
yourself.
the same man who had fought against Caesar,
Okay.
was sent with a further 50 ships to support him, giving him a total of 130. Octavian and Antony quickly sent the 8 legions who had landed in Greece earlier in the year
Yeah.
towards Thrace, under the command of Decatus and Nobanus, to hold the Copilian and Sapaean passes, 2 important routes into Greece for any force crossing from Asia Minor.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Brutus and Cassius...
So that means that if Brutus and Cassius's men come from this east side of Greece, they're going to have difficulty getting to the west side of Greece. Makes sense, because the main routes are going to be blocked by these two members. There we go.
Crossed the Aegean into Greece, landing in Cestus in August 42 BC. Thrace, at the time, was ruled by two brothers, Rhascupolis and Rhascus. Brutus had previously won Rhascupolis to his side, and the Thracian king now went with 3,000 cavalry to reinforce the liberators, while his brother Rhascus sided with the Triumvirs, leading 3,000 cavalry to Decatus and Nobanus.
Ah.
The board
Rifting family.
was now set. Appian claims that Antony and Octavian had roughly 100,000 men, consisting of 19 legions, the 11 recently transported from Italy, and the 8 holding the Thracian passes, as well as 13,000 cavalry. Cassius and Brutus also had approximately 100,000, consisting of 19 legions, some of which were under strength, 20,000 allied cavalry, and 4,000 horse archers from the Parthians, Medes, and Arabs.
Mate, these numbers are high, and they seem legitimate as well. So these are two very large horses, I believe, like for the time period as well. What's this little side note? The Parthians were keen to be involved, seeing an opportunity to weaken Rome by encouraging the war between the two sides. Well, of course they wanted to.
Some modern historians,
sense.
However, have questioned whether such large armies could realistically be maintained logistically, and have suggested numbers closer to 60,000 on both sides.
Okay.
Whatever the true number, it is agreed that the Triumvirs had a slight infantry advantage and the Liberators a slight edge in the number of cavalry. Even if the more modest number of 60,000 on each side is accepted, both armies would still be colossal, larger than even the armies fielded by Caesar and Pompey and Phasaelus. In many ways, it was a case of history repeating itself. The Caesarians, this time under Antony and Octavian, had landed a large army in Greece, but had a precarious supply route, with their enemies controlling the sea behind them. The Pompeians, under Cassius and Brutus, also had a large army with a secure supply line, and they could focus on trying to force a situation where they could starve their opponents into submission. In our next episode, we will talk about the pivotal Battle of Philippi, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider...
And I guess that means that the chessboard has been set up for the new episode, and I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are as well. If you enjoyed this reaction, you know what you need to do, but before that, if you haven't already, head over to Kings and Generals page, that link's in the description box down below, and like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.